Welcome back, Copic fans. We are doing some coloring today. I am back in my new Copic sketchbook. This has this amazing new paper, a little bit lighter weight than Express and Neenah cardstock. But I love it. Very smooth, a little bit harder, similar to the Express, but a little bit lighter weight. The color is almost a dead ringer for the Neenah cardstock, so it's slightly off-white. I have stamped a Dreamerland Crafts image in here, and I just did it in my Memento tuxedo black this time, just to keep it simple. I'm going to use some fun color combinations on this guy, a lot of earth tones. But another really beautiful masculine stamp, and then off to some other things in the weeks to come. I haven't seen any specific requests. If I've forgotten yours, please comment again in the comment section. I know a while back I had a request for black and white, and I have that in my pile. And then I had a request for violets, a specific type of violets to show kind of that fuzzy edge. And that's going to be something you would do on top of Copics, maybe with a different medium. So I don't know that it's an impossibility, but I haven't quite figured out yet how to tackle it. So working on that. But if you have other things that you'd like to see, just let me know. In the meantime, we will zoom in on this guy just for some fun coloring and get it going. All right, I hope you're ready for some speed coloring. We're going to start with a E50 for skin tone and fill that little face in. And then I'm jumping up to an E21. So I'm adding some shading from the right-hand side and then a little bit from that left. I'm saying that that light's going to come in from that left-hand side. But because of the way he's turned, we'll have some shading on both sides of the face, kind of down the left-hand side of his nose because of the way the face is turned, up under the cheeks, kind of in toward the corner of those eyes, gone back down to the E21, and then the E50. Sorry, the last skin tone was an E33. I'm adding a little bit of E93 on the cheeks, and then I'm also filling in the mouth just to start. E04 is going to go over the mouth as well to darken that up. E21 again to kind of really redefine some of that shape of the face. I needed to add a little more, and then E50 to soften that back out. It's getting pretty close to where I'd like it, so about ready to move on to the next thing. E81 is going to be those pants. I love the E8s. They have a beautiful mossy earth tone to them, so I'm going to base in that. And then the E84 is next, coming in on those pants from the darker side and flicking upward so the fronts of his legs stay lighter. And I'm going to step away from the pants for now, but I'm going to come back eventually with a texture. E43 is next, and I'm going over the jacket with that, kind of a bomber leather jacket, filling that in. And then using an E44 for some shading. Again, trying to remember throughout this entire process where my light source is coming from. So it's the upper left corner. So the tops of his arms are remaining light. The front of his chest is a little bit lighter. E47 is coming in to reinforce some of those shadows. Obviously, I'm working with what the artist has given me. I'm working with some of the lines they have put in on this piece of line art, or this stamp in this case. And then I'm softening that with the E43. A lot of times I found if I work quickly enough, and obviously I've sped this up, but I am working quick, that I can skip back down to my lightest color. I did a touch with the E41, and I actually like to do that sometimes when I want that little bit rougher surface. It softens that up a bit. B32 is going to be the base of the scarf, and so I've got that. I'm coloring that in. And B34 is going to add some shape and shading to that, show that dimension of that rippling scarf just a little bit, just enough to give that sense of movement and form. I'm going to soften that up with the B32, and then I'm also going to come in and do a little bit more with the B32. I went ahead and decided maybe he has little mittens on, and so I've added that B32, and I'll add a little B34 onto those mittens and softening them up, of course. Onto his helmet, and I'm going to assume that's kind of a leather bomber helmet as well. So I'm starting with the E44 this time. So it's definitely a darker shade that I'm starting with as my base on the helmet. Then I'm going to come in, you're going to see here in just a second, colorless blender on the eyes of the goggles, and then flicking just from the bottom edge, that E44, a little bit around the edge. Notice it's white in the center, and then softening with that colorless blender to hopefully show that glass or plastic that we're seeing through of those goggles. E47 is next, and darkening up those edges, framing the face real nicely. Paying attention to where that light source is, softening up with the E44. And then I'm going to lighten it again with the E41 again. I feel like it gives that weathered look to it because it kind of bleaches it a little bit. So it gives that weathered look of that leather, which I love. E33, I'm just touching on that little fringe of bangs. I don't need much there. And then I'm coming in with that B34 because I think he's got some sort of thing around his head underneath the helmet. And I'm just going to say it's blue too. E44 for those boots. Obviously, I could have done all these areas at once, but I'm kind of choosing colors as I go. And so I hadn't made that decision to do them all the same right away. But I could have done multiple areas at once. This one's a little trickier to decide where to put those light sources on that back boot in particular. I'm trying to show the form of it, so I leave a little bit of light, but I'm not sure really how much would be there. So I'm kind of fudging that back boot a little bit just to get that shape in there. E87, now I'm going to add some vertical stripes, and I'm going to pay attention to some of the wrinkles in those pants and the shape of those pants. So look how I'm adding that big wrinkle and then coming down the full length of the leg, and then I'm going to go around the leg. So there's some curve to it, and I'm going to come in from both sides. It doesn't have to be a continuous line, so I'm keeping it really light and kind of flicking just to hint at it. It was really sharp and crisp to me. It was almost too much. So I'm adding E84, coming back and actually softening right where that shading was to soften that. He has those little patches on his bomber jacket. So B34 and actually a little B41. And then I've got the edges of his goggles. I'm adding a BV23, that blue violet, and a little bit of BV25, just to get a little darker. I needed definitely to add some darkness to that. It was really not dark enough. C3 is going to be those handles. I assume he's added some sort of metal handle onto there. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing. And some C5 to add just a touch of shape. These are tiny, so I'm really just flicking one little flick. So I'm starting, it's off screen, but I'm starting with an E21 on the wings, and I'm thinking cardboard is probably what he's built these guys out of, or something similar. It could be a wood, but I'm thinking maybe cardboard for weight purposes. Anyway, so we're going to fill that in with E21. And it just gives it that base. I'm really going to try to add a little bit of texture onto this because it really is just kind of a flat surface. And I'm seeing the underside too. And so really there's not going to be a whole lot of light or difference in like light and dark and shading. So as much as anything as I start adding my E23, I'm thinking about adding a texture. And so I'm flicking from the top and I'm flicking from the bottom. It's not so much about shading as texture on this point because really it's a flat surface, and so it's not going to vary like a round surface would. Something that had a roundness to it. So I'm really just adding some flicks with that brush nib of the E23, and I am going to add one more color, E25, same thing. I'm adding some darker flicks, less of this color at this point, kind of adding into some key areas behind the arm, around those creases. And some long flicks just to add that texture in. I'm going to go back here in just a second and soften those areas up. Obviously you can see me kind of hesitating and debating what I'm doing at this point because I'm really just experimenting. This is not an image I've colored before, so I'm not sure how this is going to look or if this is the look I really even want. E23 to soften some of that up. I'm filling in the edge a little bit more too. I felt like that was too light. So E21, I'm really at this point coming back in and really scrubbing this down. I'm softening those colors, blending them together. I can still see the brush strokes, but I'm giving this a good once over, brushing pretty heavily. It's not totally smooth, but it's going to give me that effect. I am going to end up running out of time here to do the background, but next week, tune in. I will have the background to this very video. Thank you so much for stopping by today in Copic in the Craft Room. If you have a chance, please like our channel and like this video, and stop by Copic in the Craft Room on Facebook. Make sure to leave questions. I am always listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's video and come back for next week's background. It turns out spectacular. Have a happy, colorful week.